It's a simple to-do application built with Django 3 and Vue.js. Also, I'm using here Bootstrap 4 to make it look nice. I wanted to keep it simple, so I didn't use Django REST framework. It's just vanilla Django and Vue.js without components. The backend part completely repeats the one I used in the video Django 3 to-do app with AJAX and jQuery. Also, the Bootstrap layout of this app will be the same too. I have installed Django, so first of all I want to create a new Django project. And also I want to create a task app. Now I have to add the task application to my project. I'm opening the settings py module, and here I'm appending the installed apps list with the task app. Then on the level of the manage.py file, I want to create two folders. The templates folder. I'm sorry. And the static folder to store my static files, CSS and JavaScript. Now I want to add these folders to my Django project. So I need templates list and dirs list. I am appending with absolute path to the templates directory. So base dir variable and the templates name, the name of the folder. And at the bottom of the settings.py file, I'm creating the static files dirs that is a list too. And again, now I want to add to the static folder styles CSS file and main.js file. Then in the templates folder I want to create the base HTML file, and here I want to add my main.js file and the styles CSS file. I want to use the load static filter. And here I want to add a link where href attribute will be equals to static styles CSS. And at the bottom of the file, but before the closing body tag, I'm doing the same but with the script tag. Also, I want to add Vue.js and Axios.js library to my project. Vue.js will manage our data and will take care of all manipulations with the DOM. And to perform get and post requests from Vue.js to Django, I will use the Axios.js library. So, the Bootstrap CSS. Then I need two script tags. The first one will be Vue.js. Just Google for Vue.js CDN and Axios.js CDN. Then I need to create a block to render data from the task app. I want to use the standard Bootstrap layout and I want to use another div with 6 bootstrap columns width, and I want to get it centered, and I need a margin from top 5 bootstraps units. And here I'm creating the block. Now let's create a new view to handle a user's requests. I want to start with the routing, so in the root urls.py file, I want to create a new URL pattern that will handle all requests to the tasks. And I want to use urls.py module from the task app. My task app has no urls.py module, so I need to create it. And I'm creating a new URL pattern, and all requests to the localhost tasks will be handled by TaskView class. And the name of that pattern will be tasks list URL. So now I need to define the task view. I want to define it in views.py file, so I need to import it from views, import all. Dot means the current folder, this one. Now let's create the task view. And now I need to import the view class from Django Vue's generic module. So the get method of this view will render HTML template. And I want to pass into the template the context dictionary with the name as the key and the red as the value. Now I need to create the task HTML template. To do it, in the task folder, in the inner task folder, I am creating templates task folders. And inside inner task folder, I'm creating tasks HTML file. And this tasks HTML file will extend the base HTML template, the name. Okay, let's test it. First of all, I want to apply migrations. And now I want to run the server. Okay, 7000 port number. We can see the value of the name variable are rendered successfully. Okay, now let's inspect the page. I need the network pane, and here we can see that all files, Bootstrap, CSS, Vue.js, Axios.js, styles and main.js are loaded successfully. We've got 200 status code. Okay, and now I want to make a layout for this project. So the layout will have two parts. It's just a static HTML file. So two parts. The first one is the form with input field, the label and the button. And the second part is just a container for all tasks. And each task is just a Bootstrap card. So in the tasks HTML file, I want to create a div with the app ID. This div will be bind with my Vue.js object. Then the form. You can use Bootstrap forms from documentation like I did in the last video. I quickly do almost the same with the Emmet plugin. So my form will have standard Bootstrap classes, and the form tag will have one div with the form group CSS class and the raw CSS class. This raw have two columns, left and right. The left one with a label tag and an input field, and the right column will have only a button. So the raw will have two children. The call9 will have the label with the create new task text and an input field with form control CSS class. Then I am using the caret symbol to climb up, and call9 div will have a sibling, a div block, but I want to change the alignment direction for this div. So it will have the div flex and the flex column CSS classes, and the button with BTN success CSS classes, and with the create text. And also I want to push this button to the bottom of this parent container, so I want to use empty after CSS class 2, and I want to expand this abbreviation. Now I want to delete the action attribute, and I want to align this form and I want to delete the for attribute of the label and input type. It doesn't necessary. So let's test it. F5. Okay, I've got my form. Now I want to get the container and a basic layout for cards. So I want to have the margin from top 5, then the card, and this card div will have the card body div, and this card body will have child button with the type that equals to button, and with close Bootstrap CSS class, and with the float right CSS class. Float right pushes this button to the right edge of the parent's container, and this button will have a text $times. It's a cross, and I think that's all. I am expanding it. Okay, let's test it again. F5. I've got my card. Okay, I want to add here some random text. Great. And I think it's time to create a Vue.js object and try its data rendering. So I am opening main.js file. And here I want to create a variable that will be an instance of the Vue class, and the constructor of the Vue class accepts a dictionary a JavaScript object as an argument. And the first thing I have to do here is to specify an HTML tag that will be controlled and managed by this Vue.js object. And binding HTML tags to Vue.js objects are performed with the EL key. And here I want to bind the div with the app ID. This whole div. The next is the data dictionary. And here I have to specify a key that will become the variable I will use in my HTML template. It's the same idea like we have in Django. When we are passing the context dictionary to the template, the keys of the context dictionary becomes variables in the templates. So the Vue.js has the same idea. So I'm creating a new key, the task, and let's add some value, something like this. And now in the template I can use the task variable, the name of the key of the data dictionary of the my Vue.js object. And if we refresh the page now, we can see that nothing changed. F5, because there is a conflict between Django and Vue.js. They are both trying to render here the task variable. We can fix it with the verbatim filter. It's a Django's filter, so somewhere here I want to use the verbatim filter. Opening and closing. F5. This verbatim filter says to Django, ignore all wrapped content. So this content will be managed only by Vue.js object. And one of the main features of Vue.js framework is the reactivity of data. And to show it, let's add to the input tag the vModel attribute. So vModel that equals to the task variable the task key of the data dictionary. F5. Vue.js manipulates a DOM via special attributes that are called directives. And one of its directives is the vModel attribute that established two-way data binding between HTML tag, between input tag and the data dictionary. And now the next step is to render a number of HTML elements that have the same layout. Let's assume that we have several tasks. So I want to add to the data dictionary the tasks variable. That'll be a list of objects, and each object will have a title. And in Django template language, we can iterate through a list of objects with special for filter. Vue can do the same. So let's add to the card div a new attribute v4 that equals to a definition of the for loop, like in Python, for task in tasks, and we can use here the task object. It will be a dictionary, a JavaScript object that is an element of the tasks variable. And here I can use its attribute to get the value. Let's test it. And I've got 2 cards for each of my tasks. So I want to add a margin mt2, and I want to delete the value for the task. Okay, so the idea is the same like we have in Django template language. There is a for loop, and at each iteration of the for loop, the task variable gets as the value an element of the tasks list. The scope of this for loop is this div. So my further actions are the following. I have to save to a database the task from a user, and I have to return to the Vue instance a list of all tasks that already saved in a database. If a user clicks on a card, then the Vue object should send a request to Django to update its state. And if a user clicks on the close button, I want to send a request to delete this certain instance of the task class. So let's turn back to Django. And now I want to create a model and the form for this model. And my model, the task class, will have only 3 fields: the title, the date time of its creation, and the completed field. By default, all tasks are not completed, so the completed field is false. And I want to add the meta class to sort query sets. And as I created the new model, I should make migration files for the new database scheme and apply these migrations. So I need manage.py file. Okay, and migrate. Now I want to create a form for this model. So I need to create forms.py module. If you saw my Django blog tutorial, there is nothing new here for you. Django will generate an HTML form for the task model, but I want to use Django generated HTML. The form is already created. I need the form because I want to use the form validation on Django side. And now let's open the views.py file, and here I want to import the form and my model. From models, import task. From forms, import task form. And in the get method of my task view class, I want to get all task objects and display them to a user. Typically, we can get all objects with this expression. But I have to send to my frontend JSON serializable object, but the all method returns an instance of the query set class that is not JSON serializable. So I can use the values method that will return query set of dictionaries that I can convert to a list. And now I can return these tasks, list of dictionaries, to my frontend. So the get method will return an instance of the JsonResponse object that will encode my data to the JSON response. So let's import it. The first argument is a dictionary with the tasks key, and as the value will be my tasks variable. And the second argument is the status code I want to return to a frontend. That will be 200. And now let's test it. F5. And we can see that the form is disappeared and there is our empty JSON list. But I want to have a form, and I want to send to my front end the tasks list when it will be needed. To fix it, I have to check whether the request from a browser is an AJAX request or not. I can do it by checking if the request object, this one, is AJAX or not. If it's true, I want to return the JsonResponse object. Otherwise, I want to just render my tasks HTML file. And I want to delete this context argument. Let's test it again. Okay, I've got my form. And now let's create a new task. To do it, I have to implement the post method for my task view class. And into the constructor of the task form class, I have to pass the data that user has submitted. This data we can get from the request object again, from its post dictionary. For detailed explanation, see my Django 3 tutorial. Okay, I've got the submitted form, and now I can create the task class object. So if bound form is valid, new task I will get from the save method of the instance of the task form class. The save method will return a new task object. And again, I want to send to my front end the task object, but the task object, the new task variable, is not JSON serializable object. And there are many ways to serialize Python's objects. And one of the ways to serialize data is to use Django REST framework serializers. But in this case, the simplest way to do it is to use the model to dict function. I want to import it. And again, the returning value of the post method in this case will be the JsonResponse object. And the value of the task key will be the result of the model to dict function. And I am passing into it my bound form variable. If form is not valid, I want to redirect a user to main page. And here I can use the name of my URL pattern, but I need to import the redirect function. Now let's back to Vue.js. I've got backend that's ready to accept data from the Vue object. Now I need to send a request to Django. I need a request to get all tasks, that'll be a GET request, and also I need to send requests with the user's data to create a new task. That'll be a POST request. Later I also want to send POST requests to update tasks and delete them. And as you can probably guess, almost all requests will be sent to different URL addresses, and they will be handled by different Django views. If I would use Django REST framework, I can use only one URL address to send requests to create object, read, delete, and update object. And I can use different HTTP methods to do it. Vanilla Django understands only GET and POST requests. So I think that to perform requests to my backend to Django, I want to create a function that will do it. And in the right moment, I'll just call this function, pass into it what I want to send and where, and then I'll just get the response from my Django app and fill the data dictionary of this Vue object with the data that Django will send. So in the main.js file, I want to create a function. Let's say that'll be the send request function that will take a URL address as the first argument, the method, and the data. The URL argument is a URL address to send the request to. A method is the type of the HTTP method to use get or post, and the data argument is the data I want to send to Django. To perform requests, I want to use the Axios library, and I want to store the returning value of the Axios class in a variable, but it is not necessary. And the Axios class can accept as an argument a JavaScript object, a dictionary that describes parameters of the request. Let's say the first key of the dictionary will be the method. The second is the URL, the data. And to perform post requests, we must pass into Django app a CSRF token. In the video Django cast to CSRF token from cookies, I shown how to get CSRF token from cookies and how to send the token to a Django app via a requests header. But the Axios library provides a very convenient way to do it. We just have to specify a name of the CSRF cookie and the name of the CSRF header, and that's all. So XSRF cookie name key is the name of the cookie of CSRF token. CSRF token. How to get this name? We can open our app, inspect console, and we can use document cookie, and we can get our cookie with the name CSRF token. This name I used here. Then I need to set the header. And the header should have the XCSRF token. This name you can get from the Django documentation. Then, in the get method of my task view class, I said that if the request is an AJAX request, then I'll return JsonResponse object with all tasks. And to determine whether a request is an AJAX request, the isAjax method checks the value of the X requested with header. If the value is XML HTTP request, the isAjax method will return true. So I have to set the header to XML HTTP request. So I need the headers dictionary and my custom header X requested with will be XML HTTP request, and the send request function will return the R variable, but it is not necessary. You can just return this code. Axios will return a promise. Now I want to call the send request function. First of all, I want to call the send request function when the page is loaded. To do it, Vue.js provides hooks. Hooks are events that happened in a certain moment of a Vue object's lifetime. And I want to use the created hook. Created. Here I want to call my send request function. So I want to define a variable, but it is not necessary again. And I'm calling my send request function. And the first argument is the URL. It's an empty string. The method will be the get method, and that's all. I will get a promise. Then I want to call the then method of the promise, and it will be a function, a callback, and the function that takes a response from the Django. So it will be the response variable. And here I want to change the value of the tasks dictionary of my Vue object. Typically, it can be achieved with this expression: this tasks response data tasks. The response object has the data dictionary, and this dictionary will have the tasks key. The tasks, because the get method will return this dictionary with the tasks key. So the crucial point here is that this keyword doesn't refer to the Vue object here in this place. It refers to the Vue object here, but not here. And it is important to aware, when we declare a new function with the function keyword, that function has its own context, which is different from the function in which it was declared. So here, this refers to the Vue object, but inside the then function, this doesn't refer to my Vue object. So we can fix it if we'll save a reference to this Vue object in some variable. For example, that will be VM variable, and the value of the VM will be this. And here I have to use the VM variable. Maybe even I want to define it here. So I think that we've done with the get request to read all tasks from our Django app. And let's move on. Let's create task object. And to create it, I have to pass into task view class the data needed to create task class object. These data are the title of the task that I can get from the input field. And when a user clicks on the create button, the Vue object has to make a post request with this data from the input field. So first of all, I need a non-click event handler of the button. But besides the button, we can use the enter key on our keyboards, and the result of these two events should be the same. So I think that it's convenient to use the submit event handler for the form. So in the tasks HTML file, I am adding to the form the submit attribute. that equals to a name of the method of my Vue object. So I want to use create task name. I'll define it a bit later, but by default, if the action attribute of the form is omitted or its value is empty, browsers will send requests to the address that is present in its address bar. So in my case, it will be localhost tasks, and it will be the get method, get request, because I omitted the method attribute of the form, but I wanted to use the parameters of the request that I already determined in my JavaScript file, in my sendRequest function. So in the case of Vue.js framework, we can just use the prevent modifier to prevent default behavior of our browsers. Then I have to define the handler of the submit event. So the handler will be create task that I want to define in the methods dictionary of my Vue.js object. It will be a function. So again, I want to save an instance of my Vue object because I will use Axios promise again. Then I have to send to Django a user's input data, but unfortunately Vue.js framework does not provide to us the neat and convenient way to send data in AJAX requests like we have in jQuery. And if you'll send a dictionary, your backend framework, Django or Node.js or several others, will probably get an empty dictionary. Sad but true. And the working way to send data is to wrap them in an instance of the form data class. So I'm creating a new variable form data that will be an instance of the form data class. And now I want to append the form data with the key and the value. Append the title as the key and this task as the value. In this case, at this line, this refers to my Vue.js object. And now I want to call the sendRequest function. The URL will be an empty string. The method is the post method, and the data will be form data variable. Then I'm calling then function, then method, that will get the response from the Django. And here I want to use the VM variable tasks push, and I need the task from the response object, and I want to clear the input field. So VM task equals to an empty string. That's all. I think that we can test it. F5. Okay. Okay, internal server error. So Django says that I need views py line 27. Return JsonResponse, module to dict, bound from. I'm sorry for this. New task, of course. F5. Okay. it works. F5 again, and I've got all tasks when the page is loaded. Great. The next step is to change the state of a task. I want to complete a task by clicking on its card. And again, I need a click event handler, and I need to bind the event handler with the click event. Binding a click event with its handler in Vue.js is very simple. I am adding to the card div this, a new attribute, add click, and I need to specify here a handler for this event. So let's say that'll be the complete task function. Okay, but to change the state of a task to complete it, first of all, I need to identify this certain task in the database. And I can do it only by its ID. And so I have to pass into the complete task function an ID of this task. And as you remember, on each iteration of the for loop, the task variable, this one, contains all data that Django have returned. So I need to pass to the complete task ID. And also I want to move the completed task to the end of the list. And to do it, I have to know an index of the task in the tasks list. And I can get an index of each task this way. Here in the definition of the for loop in the v4 directive, I can use this construction. Task index. And at each iteration of the for loop, Vue.js will write to the index variable the index of the element. It's like Python's enumerate function. I want to pass into the complete task also an index of a task. Okay, now let's create the complete task function. In the methods dictionary, and again I need to save my Vue.js object in the variable, and again I'm calling the send request function, and here I need to specify a new URL. And at this point, it is very convenient to use Django REST framework, because I would be able to send put or page or delete requests to the same address. But vanilla Django knows only two HTTP methods, get and post. That is why I have to separate post requests for creating new tasks and updating them. So the new URL will contain the ID of a task. That will be an empty string plus ID variable plus complete string. The method will be post. And then I'll get the updated task from the Django app. So I want to delete this task from my tasks list in the Vue.js object by its index. Again, I'm calling then method, the function that will get the response from the Django app, and here task splice to delete element from the tasks list, the index, and the quantity of elements to delete. Okay, again VM tasks, and I push this task to the end of the tasks list of my Vue object. I have to use the splice method to delete the task from the tasks list, and again add it to the end of the tasks list because lists and dictionaries in Vue.js are not reactive, and Vue is not able to reflect changes in these objects. Now the Django side. I need a new URL pattern that will be ID of a task complete, like I said here, and the name of the handler. To get more details, consider to watch my Django 3 tutorial. Now I need to define task complete class in views. Py model. Now I need to get the task from my database, and I want to set the completed property to true, and I want to save the task object. Now let's return it back to Vue.js. That will be the task and the task as the value. Model to dict, of course. And the status will be 200. And the backend part is ready. And the last thing I want to do is to change text decoration of the card to line through. So let's create in the style CSS the completed property. Text decoration, line through. And now I want to add this completed CSS class to all tasks that have the completed property equals to true. So in the tasks HTML template, I want to add to the card div another property, colon class, that equals to a dictionary. The key of the dictionary is the class I want to add to the class attribute, and the value of the completed key will be true or false. So I just refer to the task completed property. Let's test it. F5. And it works. But when I added a new task, completed tasks are stay on their places, and the new ones is added to the end of the list. If I refresh the page now, completed tasks are moved at the end of the list because we got sorted list from Django. So I want to change a bit this behavior of my Vue.js object. So I want to sort the tasks list by the completed property. So in main.js, I want to use the computed properties. It's a dictionary too. And I want to use the computed property because the behavior it will provide affects the data of my Vue.js object, and also computed properties are cache-based. So here I want just to sort the tasks list, but in JavaScript the sort method takes as an argument a function that will sort the list. So in the computed dictionary, I want to define a new method, task list, for example, that will return tasks list, and I'm calling the sort method. And the sort method will get as an argument a function that will compare elements of a list. Compare is the inner function, so I have to define it here. Function compare that takes two arguments a and b, and if a completed, otherwise return 0. And that's all. And now in the template, in the tasks HTML, in my for loop, I want to use a task list property instead of the tasks. Let's test it. Okay, it works. And at last, the deleting of tasks. The logic is almost the same like in updating tasks. There is only one issue. I want to delete Django objects by clicking the close button that is placed on the card div. Okay, and how to differentiate that the click was on the cross button but not on the entire card? It's important here because a click on the card has different behavior and it's a different event. And we have to stop propagation of the click event on the close button to entire div. It is very easy to achieve. So in the template, I am setting the click event listener on this button. Click. Let's say the handler of this event will be delete task function that takes again task ID and index to delete the card from tasks list in my Vue.js dictionary. But I want to use the stop modifier to stop propagation of the click event. Now let's define the delete task method. And the delete task method will be almost like the complete task method. So I have to save a reference to my Vue.js object. Then I send request. Delete. It will be the URL. The method will be post and the data will be empty. So then I'm calling then method function that will get the response from the Django. And I have to call the splice method. Index quantity. And that's all, the Django side. I need a new URL pattern. The view. I need to get the task instance from the database. And I just call the delete method. And now I need to return something to my front end. Something like this. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's test it. F5, F5, and it works. Okay. I think that Vue.js is a pretty cool thing. If you like the video, please thumb up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.